Hi punks, what's up? If you're new here, my name is Tina and obviously I love to talk about books. And I'm glad that you're here today because either you clicked to diversify a little bit more your readings or you want to read more classics and the French literature has so much to offer for that. Either you want to look cooler at coffee shops or libraries and flex a little bit. So either way, this is the perfect place for you. Sorry if you'll hear some noises today, it's super windy today, and sometimes the windows at the apartments of my parents do not filter the wind very well, so it makes noises. Okay, little disclaimer also, you'll see through the videos that I've not talked about some authors and super famous authors such as Simone de Beauvoir or Sartre. It's because they faced huge polemics such as pedophilia or anti-Semitism, which I do not support obviously, so that's why I will not talk about them. And you'll see also that through the videos there are a lot of philosophers, so I'll put the authors by categories so you can watch the ones that interest you. Simply, if you don't know or if you haven't picked up already by my accent, I'm French, that's why I'm making this video, and that's why someone suggested and asked if I could make this video, and I hope you'll enjoy it. And without further ado, let's just jump into it. Okay, so to begin with, this one is middle-aged and very easy to get to. This is one of my ultimate favorite of all time. Also, no more mystery, it is Le Petit Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. And just so you know a little bit more about Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, he was born in Lyon, the same city I live in, that's why it's kind of dear to my heart also. And he became an aviator when he was doing his military service, and then he became a commercial aviator for the post offices. And then during World War II, he had one of the missions to convince the United States to enter the war against the Nazis. And this is a consensus among those who have read it. It is a must read for sure. Fairly inspired by his life, tired of the useless games of adults, this is an aviator who crashes into the desert, and after several days, one morning he meets a little stranger and he asks, "Draw me a ship." First he was a little surprised about it because he didn't expect that at all in the desert. He was rather expecting help. And he soon realizes that this little one doesn't come from the desert, he comes from elsewhere. I don't want to say too much if you haven't read it, and I don't want to say too much, but through the eyes of the child begins the fable of how he came here and the encounters he made from where he's from all along his way. And this is just a child reminding us what's most important in life. One of the most famous quote is, "It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye." Very easy to get into. This is, if I could recommend only one book in the French literature, it would be this one. You can go with eyes closed for sure. Next, I want to recommend to you some of the books of Romain Gary, a French diplomat who was also an aviator. First, I have to recommend Roots of Heaven. Okay, so I had to put my mic on because the wind is just too noisy. It won't be agreeable for you, so there's a difference and that's normal. So this book is set in the 50s in the actual Chad, and some rebellious movements launches the premises for decolonization, which was a common thing in Africa during these times because there were a lot of colonizations. So it doesn't please the French administration for sure, who doesn't look favorably on the idea and even accuses Morel, our main protagonist, a French also, who was in military jail. And the only idea that kept him from going crazy is that he was imagining the elephants, how they were free, and now all he wants is to fight to set them free and to prevent the hunters killing them for their ivory. But the administration and others rebellious protagonists wants to use politically his fight. And this book is about what comes from a crushing between ecological war and politic ambitions, and this is so well written. This is so interesting, and I just have to say that at first, at every beginning of Romain Gary's book, it is, at least for me, quite difficult to just know where you are in time and places, and this one particularly. So that's my favorite of the three that I recommend you, but maybe not the easiest. The writing and the story is beautiful, it is moving. If you want to know more about colonization, but not in a heavy, annoying way, and you love nature and animals, then this one is for you. Then there is the beautiful book Life Before Us. This one is written under the pseudonym Émile Ajar, which allowed the author to win twice the French Goncourt prize, which is impossible, and it won a prize for a reason. This book is told through narration of Momo, and he's teaching us that it is possible to have some happiness in very unconventional conditions, because he was raised by Rosa, who is an elderly woman now. She was Jewish and she fled a concentration camp. She was also a former prostitute, and now she's taking care of prostitutes' children who can't be taken care of by their parents. And Momo was born from a prostitute mother also who died, and Rosa is taking care mostly of the children from prostitutes who can take care of them. And Momo is deeply in love with Rosa. He's trying to give her everything. She's degenerating, she's losing memory, she's losing slowly some capacities, can't even use the stairs to go to the 6th floor where she lives. And this is beautiful prose about unconventional love in unconventional circumstances with very endearing characters, and it's a shorter one. This one is easier than Roots of Heaven, so really recommend this one, maybe first. But it's not my favorite. Next and last, there is Promise at Dawn. This is an autobiography of Romain Gary, who depicts a love story between a mother who is giving everything to her son and who has very high hopes for his future, and a son doing everything he can to not deceive her mother. Indeed, her mother, alone and poor, is fighting fiercely to give him everything, and we follow their story through chronicles of their lives during their life in Poland, in Russia, even in the French Riviera, and Romain Gary enrolled in war during the World War II, including Us in the World. This is masterfully written. It is a heartbreaking tale. I loved this book and I can only recommend it to you. Next, how not to talk about Victor Hugo, a very important figure in the Romantic movement in France and a human rights defender. You've heard about Les Miserables, maybe for sure or not, but what about The Last Day of a Condemned Man? This was a book that I still think about today. Deeply shocking at his time, this is the story of a condemned man who is facing the death penalty, and it is a plea against death penalty. He was very engaged about that, Victor Hugo. This is the story of a man who knows and is waiting every day for his last hours without knowing when it's coming, and he recounts his life and it brings him comfort. But still he knows that his fate is not changing, and he's putting us through the tension and the awaiting of knowing that something is coming but you don't know when, which is the guillotine, basically. I've heard some criticism about it that you don't have enough information to root deeply for the character to know more, but I think it's kind of the point of this book, at least it's my point of view, that you don't have the information to know why he's here, but you have enough information to emphasize, to identify to his emotions, to just live with him, the awaiting, the torture of it, the tension through the books. And I think it's kind of the point to humanize him in this way and to get to identify to him and just put us through what every man is putting through when he's facing death penalty. According to me, it is an important book, part of the French literature and the French history also, because the guillotine was a huge part of our history. So deeply revolutionary for that time. I really recommend it to you. Plus, it's kind of short. Next, if you're curious about theater, I have another book for you, Reblas. I know, wait, I know. Let me convince you. This is a book set in the 17th century in Spain, and during a crumbling empire, a minister is convincing his valet to seduce the queen in revenge of his disgrace. And this is everything Victor Hugo is great at, because he wrote so many plays, portrayal of emotions, political allegory, and bittersweet tragedy, to highlight the fact that it is really beautifully written, that it is stunningly written. I have a quote for you. Madame, beneath your feet, in the shadows, there is a man who loves you, lost in the night that veils him, who suffers, an earthworm in love with a star, who will give his soul for you, if need be, and who is dying below while you shine above. I remembered that I didn't love that much theater during high school, and I don't read plays still today. I haven't really read Shakespeare's plays, but I want to get into them one day. But this one, if you want to read a very good play in the French literature, Victor Hugo. Next, if you feel bold that you already read some French literature classics, if you just are accustomed to reading purely styled book, then Flaubert, Madame Bovary. Flaubert was a very important figure of realism, the realism movement in the French literature, and he went to trial for this novel. It is told through the eyes of Emma Bovary. She is trying to escape the banalities of her marriage in the province by having very frivolous wants and needs. It is very easy to despise Emma because she's an utterly flawed character. She is selfish, and this is very easy to just hate her. You will want to hate her for sure, as I wanted to hate her. But she reminds us on how reality is affected in a marriage, especially when one day from the other you kind of think that the reality is the same from a day to another, but is not the same at all for your partner. And she just reminds us how marriage can be difficult. Madame Bovary reminds us what happens when you're unable to find contentment during the journey and are always seeking for other destinations. And the author itself, Flaubert, said that he wrote a book about nothing. It's not really about nothing, but not much happens during this book. Definitely some things happens, but he said that he wrote this book purely for the style, purely for the beauty of writing. He spent hours and hours just moving a comma or a dot in his sentences. I just want to warn you that this is not the most plot thrilling book that you'll read, but maybe the most haunting one for the style and what he wants to convey. And to prove my point, I have my favorite quote. I learned it in high school because I passed my high school French literature diploma on it, and it is love, she thought, must come suddenly, with great outbursts and lightnings, a hurricane of the skies which falls upon life, revolutionizes it, roots up the will like a leaf, and sweeps the whole her into the abyss. I mean, this book is beautiful. If you love lyrical prose, read it. Next, for the philosophical category, I have some short books to recommend to you. Have you ever felt like nothing had sense in this world? That you felt useless, just wandering through the world, not knowing where you're going and why you're doing things? The Stranger by Albert Camus. Maybe you've read it because this is a famous book in this genre, but Camus was an Algerian-born French, and he's a famous philosopher in the French literature. And in this book, and another one I will talk about later, he introduces us to the concept of absurd in the human condition. First, you have to be aware that you need to be in a good state of mind to read this book, because it is quite depressing at some time, because it is about Meursault, a character who has little convictions, except for the fact that he is deeply convinced that his choices doesn't affect the great scheme of universe. This is a man not satisfied with the life he feels outside of it, and he despises others that thinks that their godlike words are words of law when they are only meaningless little creatures in the great universe. The writing is raw and insightful for sure. It makes you ponder on the significance of your life and your place into the world. But this is a mainstay in the French literature classics, so I can only recommend it to you. And in the same cycle, because there is 3 books in this cycle of the absurd, there is maybe another one that you don't know of. And if you have already read The Stranger, you can read The Myth of Sisyphus, The Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus, which is basically the same thing, but he is going through the absurd theme in philosophy, but through the myth of Sisyphus, who is always forced to roll that stone on the top of a hill, but is going down on the other side, and he has to redo this again and again and again. And he's exploring the theme of absurdity through this myth, and the fact that he conveys revolt rather than suicides to get out of this vicious spiral makes me recommend it to you. So if you're interested, please read it. Next, a book that I loved is Candide by Voltaire. Candide, which means, I think Candide also in English, let me look at it. Yes, Candide. This is also a very famous philosopher in the French literature, and this is about Candide, who, despite the fact that he is pushed in every direction possible, is believing in the fact that he lives in the best of the world whatsoever. He is funny and outrageous for this time. He goes around the world with his professor, and is soon learning that despite his teachings not is well in the world. You might think at first that it's kind of a whimsical fable, but this is a critique of optimism in philosophy that proclaims that every disaster and human suffering is part of a greater benevolent cosmical plan. And that's why I loved this book. I can only recommend it to you. Okay, so that's it, guys. I have also some books on my TBR that I've not read already, and I'm ashamed of it, that I wanted to share with you. It is Le Comte de Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas, which I'm hearing only good things, and I really want to get into this one, but it will be for next year, I think, because I've already read, if you don't know, War and Peace, which consumed me. So, and I want to read A Little Life before the year ends, so it will be for next year. But also, I really want to read The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux, because it is one of Amy's favorite book, I think. I'll link her channel down below. And I also want to read but more contemporary, A Winter's Promise by Christelle Dabos, which also I hear only good things. Thank you guys for clicking this video. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for being nice as always, and I hope to see you on the next video. Bye!